I have what I call guiding principles, right? And the first of the guiding principles is what I call the straight principle. And what that means is we want to keep the motorcycle as vertically straight as possible in the turns, right? Meaning less lean angle. Okay, so less lean, so lean angle is really not your friend, right? When you're lean, you're less stable. And so what I teach are methods to keep the motorcycle more vertically upright in the turn. Now, here are the three main benefits of a straighter motorcycle. So if I go through a turn, it's, let's say, this lean angle versus this, and I'm exaggerating it, what do I gain? Well, I'm going to gain stability. So the more vertically upright the motorcycle is, the more stable it is. Now, what I'm not saying you're going to get more traction, because you're not getting more traction from here than here. But what you get is a more stable motorcycle. If you were to lose traction, you have a better chance of regaining traction if the motorcycle is more vertically upright, right? So the basic technique for this is to kiss the mirror to get your chin over your wrist, basically. And what that does is just that simple movement straightens the motorcycle out. And so you get a lean angle at the same speed in the same turn, simply by shifting our chin over our hand, kissing the mirror. You will get a straighter motorcycle without giving up anything, right? So that's a main part about that. We can also go slower. If we go slower, we don't have to lean as much. And speed and direction, speed and steering come a little bit later. The other thing you get from a straighter motorcycle, a more vertically upright motorcycle in the turn, is more ground clearance, right? So if I'm leaning through a turn at this angle, I may drag parts sooner than if I were at this lean angle, right? So that's very important. One other thing, the last, is that you have lean angle in reserve. So now what that means is that if we're at full lean angle in a turn, right? So picture yourself, you're leaning into a turn at full lean angle. How many directions can you change if you're already at max lean angle? You can't go more into the turn. I mean, you could press more, but more lean is more risk. You might drag parts and you might lose traction. So if you're giving yourself a straighter motorcycle, now if I'm leaning a turn, I can lean in and I can lean out. I have two exit strategies, if you will, to change my line. And your line, it could have something in the way. In the real world, if you're on a track, it's clean, you can trust the line. But if you go into a turn this time of year, I mean, there could be a branch in the road, right? Because the wind, or all the branches are falling in my backyard now. So you go into a turn, there's a branch. Well, there's other options. We can ride over it. We can try to avoid it. But so the straight principle, again, it's not, I mean, obviously going down the road, we want to keep the motorcycle straight, but we're talking in the corner, a more vertically straight motorcycle. But in my experience, what I'm trying to teach is it's a waist up process. And, when I see that's where I think the Cornering Confidence program is really different than a lot of other programs, because even my idols, the people I look up to in training, motorcycle, gurus, if you will, they always have something to say about below the waist, where to point the knee, where to point the toe, where to weight the peg in this and that. Now, I do give some advice on below the waist, but what I'm teaching here, and I think people really want to know, is how can I do this without exhausting myself? Because if you're going to spend this 3-day trip with your buddies once a year, or you're going to take these day-long trips, if you're basically moving off and on the motorcycle all day long, it's going to be pretty exhausting. Now, people might like that. So I'm not trying to, tell them they can't do that. What I'm saying is my method has you controlling your speed 100% throughout the beginning, throughout the whole curve. Like what I tell people at the end of, straight and flat chapter is, if it's straight and flat, do that. If straight and flat, do that. Meaning, if you find something that straightens the motorcycle better, or you like the way it works, or it gets you to straighten the motorcycle more in the turn, then that would be an effective thing. A lot of times what I'll say in my courses and things is, I want you to just go right now, because we talk about braking, and I say we're going to go for a ride for 20 minutes. I want you to think about if you're keeping the chassis flat and doing things that keep the chassis flat. I could say, use your brakes, use the front brake, use the rear brake, use less throttle, don't be so abrupt. And I do use that language. But if I say try to keep the chassis flat, then people can start to make their own connections because motorcycling is a very difficult thing to teach other people. Like ask Marc Marquez to show you how he does it. You know what I mean? Right? He couldn't just articulate it in words. So there's symbolism and actual techniques that I tried to make as very basic things that bring you to those points. But you would find in my program, I don't talk a whole lot about below the waist. I do have techniques for below the waist, but we're primarily kissing the mirror. And what you'll find is many people, they think they're really getting in, and they think they're leaning over far into the turn, but they're really not. So that's the straight principle. I appreciate the question, but I would just defer people if I were teaching them right now in a course and that question came up, I would say, okay, what we want to do is, the goal is to keep the motorcycle more vertically upright, okay, less lean angle. To do that, we would lean more or less. So we're not on motorcycles now, but if I were, it works like this. I have a chest center line. My motorcycle has a center line. At minimum, we want to go into a turn with those in the same position. That's the minimum. Okay, we don't want to do a dirt bike sliding style or supermoto fighting the lean. Okay, if I'm going this way, we want to either be in line or get our chest inside the motorcycle center line. The further I get my center line in, the more vertically upright the motorcycle will be. So what I would say to you, if we were in a coaching tour, I would say, okay, follow me, and then you would see me go as far over as I could, and you'd see the motorcycle more vertically upright. And then you would see me get so that my chest was in the center line, and my motorcycle my body position would alter the actual lean of the motorcycle. That's a pretty simple technique. Kissing the mirror gets it done. Waist up, butt on the seat. And by the way, that was the aha thing that the person brought up at the track. They said, I'm having trouble, steering and using the controls and the throttle. They were on I think they were on a brand new GS, okay, BMW. And I was thinking, okay, well, how do I explain? We don't want to put a lot of weight on the handlebars. We don't want to put a lot. We want to be very neutral. And it was the trunk. It was the trunk of my body. As I went around, I kind of felt like it was just like a sack of dirt, just plopped on the seat. And what happens is, I don't know if it would work as well on like full-on sport bikes, but if you get your body on the motorcycle and you kind of you find where, like, if you're too forward, there's too much weight. If you lean back, it's not comfortable. But there's a balance point where your body's just like set, like planted on the seat. And with that, it's such a nice range to be in. Like there's a little bit of movement there, but because everything now is just light as a feather because you had that weight planted. And so that's generally how we do the straight principle. Okay, is upper body movements.